Hey everybody, how are ya? This is Dawn with Painted Willow Art. There was a pretty overwhelming response the other day when I posted about making your own holiday tags, and did anybody want to see how real quickly? So this short IGTV video is going to show you how to do just that. And this was the example I posted the other day, cute little holiday tag that you can put on a package. I love doing these because they're fairly simple and you don't necessarily have to be an artist to do this. The supplies are really simple. You need a piece of paper. I am using a piece of acrylic paper, so it's fairly thick. You could use cardstock, watercolor paper, anything that's going to give you a little bit of thickness so that there's some durability to the tags. And for today, we're going to use a pencil and eraser, a black pen. This one is waterproof. If you're going to be using watercolors to color your tags in, you want to make sure your pen is waterproof. I'm not going to use watercolors today just to try and keep the video short, so I'm going to use colored pencils. If you're going to use something like colored pencils or crayons or markers, your pen to draw with doesn't have to be waterproof. So the other nice part of these is that you can use any supplies you want to color them in. It doesn't have to be watercolor. I'm going to use colored pencils today, and then we'll need some scissors to cut them out. So to make these little tags, first thing I'm going to do is just kind of draw a general outline with my pencil so I can get my basic shape. And for something like a tree, like this one, I'm just going to start with a triangle. That gives me a nice, easy place to start, keeping in mind that these things you draw don't necessarily have to be realistic. So just to give myself kind of a place marker for my tree, I'm going to draw a triangle. And then to give it a little bit of character, I'm just here and there going to kind of make a little wing coming out. And maybe another one right there. And then what I will do is go back in and erase these little lines. I get a lot of questions about my eraser because those seem to be one of the things that people are often on the hunt for, and I know everybody's kind of got their favorite eraser. This is mine. It erases really cleanly and it doesn't take a lot of pressure to do it, so it doesn't destroy the paper in the process. I actually prefer this to a kneaded eraser, but that's just my preference. So there's my general tree shape, and then I'm going to come down here and just kind of draw a little line here and a little line here, and that's my trunk. And I'm going to go back in and erase any stray lines that I don't want. So there's my trunk. That's going to be my tree. You can add, do other shapes if you want to. You could do just a circle with a little box on top. That could be a tree ornament. Maybe you want to do a candle. So for a candle, I'm going to draw a rectangle to start with, but I'm going to leave the top open. And on this top, I'm going to come up a little bit, scoot this over so you can see. I'm going to come a little bit above where my line ended and just kind of make a little bit of a wavy line. And then I'm going to come down and make a loop and another one and back up. And then go in and erase any of those lines that cross in there. So you get kind of that melted wax dripping look, right? And then a big teardrop on top with a line. There's a candle. So your shapes can be fairly simple. They don't have to be really complicated, and they're still going to be really, really cute. So what I'm going to go do now is outline these in a black pen. The one that I'm using is a Uniball Eye fine pen. This is waterproof, so if I wanted to use watercolors on these, I just let this dry real good, and then I can watercolor over the top of it, and it's not gonna run. Like I said, if you're using markers or colored pencils or something like that that's not a wet medium, you don't have to have a waterproof pen, but I just use this one all the time. So I'm going to speed this up while I outline these because that's fairly self-explanatory. You don't need to watch me do that in real time. So let's outline our shapes. Okay, everything's outlined. And I realized I forgot to put my star on my tree, so I'm going to do that real quick. I'm going to do it kind of like we were taught in grade school where the lines go through it. So I'm just going to start right about here and come up, down, over, over, down. So that it's just kind of touching the top of my tree. It doesn't have to be sitting on there, you know, really, really fancy. And then when I outline it, I'm not going to do these middle lines, as I don't really want them to be there. I want the star to be empty. So I'm just going to go around the outside with my black pen. Okay. Now I'm going to come back and I'm going to erase over all these lines because in some spots I can see the pencil. I didn't trace very carefully. So I'm just going to come back and go over this and erase all those lines. I'm going to do the star last because that ink is likely still wet. And if I hit that with the eraser right now, that black ink is going to smear and I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to erase over all of them. Make sure all my pencil lines are gone. And hope that the ink is dry on my star. And erase those middle lines. There we go. So now I'm ready to color them in. You can do these however you choose. They don't have to be realistic. If you've watched along with me for any period of time, you know I like whimsical. So whimsical is not realistic looking. It's not based on anything realistic. It's just fun. So your tree doesn't have to be green. You could have a purple tree if you wanted. And I think that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to grab my purple colored pencil and I'm just going to color this in. If you were doing it with watercolors, then you would watercolor it in. If you're doing it with markers, whatever you're doing it with, just go ahead and color it in. And you can see I'm doing this kind of quick. There's not really any magic formula for coloring things in with colored pencils. I just want to color the area and fill it in. Now, if you wanted to, and you want to get a little fancy with it, you could come back with a darker shade of the same color and maybe down one side, go over it with that darker color and kind of give it a little bit of a shading that gives it a little bit of character. And what I'm going to do is just start coloring out towards the middle, and I'm going to lighten my pressure the further towards the middle I go. So I'm a little harder pressure over on this edge, and as I come towards the middle, I'm just ever so slightly lightening up my pressure so that that darker color gets lighter and lighter and lighter, and that allows it to blend in with the other color. So you can see I've got a darker shading here and a lighter color over here now. So you would just continue on your way, coloring your shapes in however you choose. So I'm going to speed up the video again here for just a second, because we don't need to watch me color at real time. I'm trying to keep this short and sweet for you. So I'm just going to color in everything however I want to, whatever colors you want to use. Okay, everybody's colored in. Oops, almost. 1 second. I need, what color do I want to put on top of there? Let's do purple up here. Let's talk for just a second about what I did on some of the coloring, because you'll notice that all of these are a little bit shaded, kind of like I did the tree to begin with. So what I did on this one, I started with a lighter red and then I came back with a darker red. Because this is spherical shape, we kind of want to make it look spherical. So to do that, you're going to come darker around one side and just kind of bring it part way around, and then go lighter, lighter, lighter in kind of an arc up towards the other side. It doesn't matter which side you do this on, but what you want to envision is that there's a light source
coming from one angle, and you're going to start the dark opposite of that light source. So if I was imagining there was a light right here shining at this ball, it's going to be really bright on this surface of the ball, and then it's going to get darker as it goes around the curve because this light can't go around that curve. So that's how you decide where your dark's going to be. Just imagine your light source wherever, and it doesn't really matter. It could have been over here, could have been down here, wherever. That's going to be the lighter spot, and then you're going to go darker on the far side of that, and then just lighten your pressure if you're using colored pencils and shade it in. On the candle, I did kind of the same thing I did on the tree. I started with a lighter blue and then came back in with a darker blue just on this side, lightened my pressure as I went to kind of blend them together. And I did the same thing on the flame. I started with yellow, then went to an orange down here and a red down at the bottom. It just gives it a little bit of dimension. Okay, so at this point, you could leave them here if you like this look. There's really no right or wrong. It becomes personal preference as to what you like or don't like in terms of how busy they are, how much is on them. This is perfectly fine just the way it is. I like to zhuzh things up a little bit. So I'm going to come back with my black marker and I'm going to put some doodles on them. On the sample that I showed you, I just drew little circles and then came back with red and put little red dots in the middle of the circles. On this one, I think I'm going to do spirals just because I like them. There's really no rhyme or reason to it, and I think that's a little bit hard to see on camera. There we go. And I'm just going to do them randomly on my tree. And after you get something doodled on there like that, kind of take a step back for a minute and take a look at it and decide, are there empty spots? Do you need to add some more? You can do them different sizes. So I'm coming back with a few smaller ones just to kind of fill that in. There we go. On my Christmas ball up here, and I'm going to turn my paper a little bit so I have a better drawing angle. It's going to make it a little wonky on camera, but you'll get the idea. I want this to have stripes on it. So rather than do them straight across, because this is supposed to be spherical, I'm going to do a little bit of an arc. And that's going to help it look curved, just like the shading does. So I'm going to come in here and do 4 lines to start with. How far apart or close together you put them is completely up to you. If you don't like lines, you could do polka dots or other shapes, or even do your little swirls on the ball instead. You get to decide what you're going to doodle these up with. And keep in mind that when you're doing doodles like this, they don't have to be anything complicated. Basic shapes often work extremely well. So something like that. And then I'm just going to continue that down here a little bit lower on the ball. Keeping my lines a little bit curved. And I'm going to fill in this middle one again. You can do things like Google Christmas ornaments or Christmas ball ornaments to get ideas for what to doodle on something like this one. And I think I'm going to come back and put some circles in the middle just to put a little bit of something in there. So again, basic shapes, nothing terribly complicated. And then on my top, which would be where the ornament hangs from, I'm just going to put a few little lines. It just gives it a little bit of dimension. And on my candle, I think I'm going to leave the candle alone. I don't think I'm going to do anything at all to it. So again, this would be another place you could stop if you want to. If you want to continue doodling and adding more to them, absolutely go ahead and do that. Now to use these as tags, I'm going to cut them out. And there's a couple of different ways you can do this. Oops. Let me zoom you out a little bit. there's a couple different ways you can do this. You could do just kind of a rough cut around the outside. So you have something like that. Do the same with all three of them. I could have found my bigger scissors, huh? So you could just cut them, you know, those aren't the most fantastic cuts, but you could cut them out and use them like that if you wanted to. But what I find adds just a little bit of extra oomph to them is to do what's called a fussy cut. So we're going to come in and cut a little bit closer to the image. I'm not going to go right to the black line. I'm going to give myself just a little bit of a border. You can see I did it on this one. There's just a little bit of a white border there, but it's not going to be very much. But I'm going to mimic the shape of what I'm cutting as I'm cutting. Just giving it that little bit of a white border, following the contour of the shape. It doesn't have to be exact, just close to the contour. So I end up with something like that. Now, points on a fussy cut, you can see that's kind of pointy up there at the top. Points on a fussy cut can often get bent, so I'm just going to come back with my scissors and round that off a little bit. So it's not quite as pointy there at the top. And that just protects it. Those little points can get bent and munched up pretty easily. And I'm going to do the same thing around my other two. You could do this with an X-Acto knife if you wanted to. Now, I'm going to cheat a little bit up here on my star and just kind of cut around it like that for right now till I get the bulk of the rest of the shape done, and then I'll come back to that star and fix that a little bit. And I'm just doing that because there's so many points up there. I just want to be careful with that I don't bend it and mangle it. So now I'm going to come back up here to my star, and I'm not going to follow every little indent of that star because that gets, you end up with little thin pieces that are easy to bend and destroy. So I'm just going to kind of do a bit of a circle around it, and I might come back and go back in just a little closer right there. So we get that. And then I'm going to do the same thing with my Christmas ball. Just following the contour around, giving it a little bit of a white border. And there we go. There are our holiday tags. Now for these, you can just write on top of them. Yeah, maybe this one is to... So you can just write on top of it who it's to. Now, at this point, you can use these as they are and just tape them to the package. If you want to give them a little extra pizzazz, you can poke a hole in the top and put a little bit of a string or ribbon and attach it from the string or ribbon so that then the tag would move a little bit. I love these because you can make them whatever design you want to fit whatever theme you want. You don't have to use them just for the holidays this time of year. You can do things like maybe draw a flower and use that for a Mother's Day present tag, or use them for birthdays, whatever you want. You can draw whatever you want, color it in, and make any kind of tag you want fairly quickly and easily, keeping in mind that they don't necessarily have to be realistic. So whatever it is that you're wanting to draw for a tag, kind of look at that thing and get a sense of the shape, and then just ad lib it a little bit, like the tree. The tree is generally kind of a triangular shape, but it doesn't have to be real detailed. You could have just left the triangle and used the triangle without putting these extra little wings on it if you wanted to. So you can look at something and try and kind of simplify the shape in order to help you draw it a little easier, and run with it. By the time you add doodles and color and things like fussy cuts, all of that adds to the character of these. So even though they're not necessarily realistic looking, they're still really, really cute. So there you go, holiday tags. If you make some, I would love if you post them and share them for you to tag me so I can see, because I love seeing what people come up with. And if you have any questions, absolutely put them in the comments on this video and I will answer them. And be sure to save this for later so that you can always come back and look at it again and see how to do them. Thanks, everybody.